Welcome back to another episode of Street Tales. I'm Tyler Martin. I've got my buddy Dave Tarbox with me, and super excited. I met Dave in Maine. He is a barber. I met him when he was working as a barber, and now he owns his own barber shop. The dude is crushing it. He's got a family. He's got a very amazing life story. Dave and I used to go talk at high schools together, just kind of the different sides of law enforcement and our own personal stories coming up. But I am super excited to have Dave with me. And Dave, I really appreciate your time, and I'm looking forward to getting into this conversation, brother. I'll kick it to you.
Thanks, Tyler. Appreciate it, man. Yeah, this is humbling, to say the least, coming from the exact opposite side of law enforcement. So, yeah, it's definitely, I don't get asked to do stuff like this every day, and it's a cool opportunity. I appreciate it. Yeah, so, I mean, I'll start. So I met Tyler a few years ago. Great guy, and we kind of hit it off pretty much instantly. And we got to talking, and we got into each other's backstories and stuff. And, you know, over the course of like a year or so, we got to know each other. And yeah, I mean, so I'm from Massachusetts. I moved to Maine a few years ago, and that's where I became a barber. But yeah, so just south of Boston, Quincy originally, bounced around a lot as a kid. And I never really fit in with like a group because I was never in one area long enough to make like a core group of friends till I got to high school.
Mm-hmm.
The thing with that is it was easy enough to fall in with the fuck ups because you just had to act up in class, and the kids who were acting up in class were like, hey, he's one of us. You know, you could go down the park, you could smoke a cigarette, and the kids that were down the park smoking cigarettes were like, hey, he's one of us. You know, I never had to wait. I didn't play sports or anything like that as a kid. So like I said, I didn't have like that core group of friends. Later on in life that, you know, led me to drugs, and then drugs led me, you know, to like a life of crime for a number of years. And through trial and error, I eventually was able to turn my life around, and it's kind of where I'm at right now. And I'm pretty grateful for that, you know?
Yeah. And Dave, I think it's something that you and I, even though we kind of have different paths that we've taken, but our growing up, our childhood. I mean, I did have sports. My dad got me into sports when I was like 8 years old, but I grew up in the projects in Atlanta where I was usually the only white kid. I mean, there's a story I have with my mom where the kids in the neighborhood, cause I think I was the only white kid, or at least there was few of us. My mom was a Marine, so she didn't make a lot of money. And I was coming home from the school bus, and kids started throwing rocks at me, and they hit me in the face. It hit me right between the eyes. I still have a scar from it. And I was bleeding all down my face, and my mom thought I had actually gotten shot. But, you know, I kind of bounced around, and I was kind of in the same boat. I got kicked out of preschool. You know, it was rough, and I appreciate the struggle that my mother had and my dad, because they separated it. But Marines don't make a lot of money. So we were always in a trailer park or the hood or whatever. So I bounced around a lot as well between the two of them. So I would say the difference I had was I did have sports. So sports kind of gave me an immediate injection of friends, so to speak, and kind of kept me down the path. Not that I didn't get into some weed and stuff when I was in high school, but that's a little different.
Yeah, it is a little different. I mean, the first time I got drunk, I was like 7 years old.
Oh, geez.
It's one of those things. Yeah, I was drawn to that lifestyle.
Yeah.
I saw it as I emulated adults or people who I thought were adults, and I thought that's how I was supposed to act.
Yeah.
And so even at a very young age, I was trying to like play this part. And yeah, so like, you know, again, it was just drawn to that lifestyle for whatever reason. And, you know, I feel like I created a lot of my problems myself looking back on it now, but you know, that's what I wanted. And it's really hard to tell a kid, you know, that knows everything that they're fucking up, you know?
Yeah. No, I definitely, I mean, I've seen it. I don't know that I can necessarily speak from experience on it, but so you said you bounced around a lot in Mass. Do you have anywhere that you specifically call home?
Yeah, well, so my mother went back to nursing school, and she ended up buying a house in Whitman when I was in high school, her and my father. And so Whitman is kind of Whitman and Brockton was where I spent a majority of my time.
Ooh, with the what are the not Cyprus? What there's a group of people that live there. We used to go there. I'm drawing a blank on it. It's Dominican or
Oh, the Cape
Cape
Verdean?
Verdean. Cape Verdean, bro. Yeah, it's a large population of Cape
Huge,
Verdean.
yeah, huge Cape Verdean population.
Oh, bro, I didn't know you lived around there.
Yeah, well, so we moved out of Quincy. We went from Quincy to Braintree. I spent a lot of time at my grandparents' house in Weymouth,
Hmm.
and then my grandparents ended up moving down the Cape, and so I would spend like summers down there with them and stuff like that. So, like I said, basically the South Shore of Massachusetts, Boston South. I lived in Boston for a little while, so but yeah, so we moved out of Quincy, and my parents were like, "We want to get him away from the city. We don't want him getting in any trouble." Yeah, moved Braintree to Whitman, and then right next to Whitman is Brockton. So again,
Gotcha.
when I thought I was drawn to it, I was like, "Ooh, what's this?" You know, it's a 20-minute walk down the street, and we're right back to it. So,
Well, I could give you one story about Brockton that I had. I was with the Cape Verdean president and their prime minister. This is when I was working for the Secret Service. And
they go there to campaign because
yeah,
Cape Verdeans can still vote in
correct.
like the national election. So he goes to the high school all the time. That's a big ass high school too, huh?
Yes. Well, we rolled in and I'm relatively new and I was actually driving that time. And we rolled in and the cops were like, are like, do you guys know where you are? Like, what are you doing? Cause we were out there, like, I don't know, consulate or a church or something. I don't remember what they called it. It's not really an embassy. And he was like, we just had like two shootings like a few hours ago. So like, we'll do the best we can, but
Yeah, we're
like, I need you guys to understand where you're at. We're like, holy crap. But I mean, the people themselves that were there were great. I mean, we had a great time and the food and all that was
Mhm.
amazing, but
Oh yeah.
it was interesting. I was like, this isn't like, what is going on? Like, there's more Cape Verdeans in Brockton than there are
Yeah.
in Cape Verde.
So it's like Massachusetts in general has a really diverse immigrant population. And I thought for a long time, I mean, I never really got outside that area for a major portion of my life. But once I started and, you know, you'd meet people and I'd be like, oh, like, blah, blah, blah. And, you know, there wasn't Cape Verdeans. There wasn't like Portuguese people. There's not Puerto Rican people. It's weird. It's like, you know, Mexican and black.
Yeah,
and,
yeah,
you know what I mean? And it's
yeah, it's
like,
true.
it's just cool that we had, like, you know, I grew up with like a huge melting pot, like a really big community. So stuff
Yeah,
like that.
then you go up to Lawrence, you got all the Dominicans, bro.
Yeah, exactly.
No,
Yep.
respect. So, I mean, growing up in that area, most people, I mean, I was new to Boston, but I didn't realize how big of a role like Boston PD, Mass State Police, like those, they are powerhouses in New England. I'm assuming you had interactions with them growing up,
Yeah, I
good or
was
bad.
in law enforcement a little bit, but when I started fucking off, like I really started fucking off. So majority of my arrests were by like the Mass State Police and stuff like that, like like the gang task forces. Those are the type of people that I would have run-ins with, just because of not because of like what I was doing or who I was, just based on the areas that I were in, like Brockton. I forget what it was called, but like they had, you know, it was like a DEA, Brockton Police, State Police Task Force.
Hmm.
You know, trying to cut down on the, you know, gang crime and the drug crime and stuff like that. And because I was in those type of neighborhoods, that's just who I was running into, you know?
Yeah, no, I definitely get it. And yeah, Mass State Police is, I mean, it's wild working with law enforcement all over the country. Mass State Police, there's like 3,000, I don't know if it's troopers or people, but for a state police, that's massive because I work for Maine State Police and there's 243. That's it. So the scope is a lot different, but I mean, if you're ready to segue into it, bro, when did that all kind of start for you? You said you started fucking off. You really started fucking off. Like what age range was that?
That was like, I mean, I started, so I was a heroin addict at 17. You know what I
Ooh,
mean? I was shooting dope like an adult when I was a kid, and you know, I didn't even know how to wash my ass properly. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
I had no idea what I was doing. It took a couple years to like really catch up with me because at that age, you know, they didn't expect me to be, you know, a drug addict at that age. So, you know, I still was able to get jobs and I was still able to support myself. But I would
Yeah.
say like my early 20s is when my life like really started falling apart. That's when I started getting arrested, you know, homelessness. And I just like really let drugs consume me. I was, you know, selling drugs, but it was one of those things. Like I would say a majority of drug dealers, especially the ones that I knew, were just selling drugs to support a habit. And, that's what I fell into.
Mm.
And yeah. So
Well, what got you into it originally? Because that is pretty young.
yeah. So again, I would say I started smoking weed and smoking cigarettes like in junior high school, but just here and there, like that young, you really can't get stuff like that.
Yeah.
However, I did start hanging out with older kids, and they were able to get stuff like that.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, we all kind of hung out down at the park, and people would have their dime bags of weed and be drinking beers and stuff like that. So again, it was easy enough to fall in with that group of people, and some good guys and people I'm still friends with today. But for the most part, we were fucking off, we were fuck up. So eventually, I want to say we're probably I would say like freshman year of high school, we got introduced to like OxyContin and OCs.
Mm-hmm.
And then, yeah, by sophomore year, that was really like our flavor.
The oxys.
Yeah, we were doing that. And again, we didn't know what we were doing, and we were just doing them all the time. The problem was it was easier for us to get that than it was to get beer. You know what I mean? Like to get beer was like a multi-step process. We'd have to
Yeah.
get the money. We'd have to find somebody that was 21. We'd have to have a ride.
Mm-hmm.
We'd have to do all these things. To buy drugs, you don't have to have an ID to buy drugs. You just have to have an ID to buy drugs. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
that's a valid point. I never thought about
yeah,
it that way.
yeah. So it was just, we'd come up, and then this was before the pharmacy robbery started happening. I don't know if you remember that, but like,
Oh yeah.
yeah, a lot of pharmacies were getting robbed. So before then, they were dirt cheap. They were handing them out.
Yeah.
People, yeah. And so, you'd have like four guys. Everybody throws in like $5 or $10. You go down the street, you buy an 80, you'd split it, and you'd all be rocked for the whole night. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
we started doing that a couple nights a week. And then as the robbery started happening, the prices started going up because they started getting harder and harder to get. So as the prices started going up, we started getting introduced more and more to heroin. And at first it was like, a once in a while thing. You'd really have to go out of your way to find it. But like I said, by the time I was about 17, it was commonplace and it was a fraction of the price. So at that time they had gone up from like $20 to probably like $60 a piece, where you could get, you could get like half a gram of heroin for like $30,
Mm-hmm.
and that'd keep you high for 2 days. The problem is the dependence on heroin goes up quickly too.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like what starts as maybe like a $15 a day habit, months and years later, it's a couple $100 a day, and it's just unsustainable.
Do you think it's worse than the oxy itself, like straight heroin? I've never actually asked that question.
The kick from OxyContin, because it's made in a lab.
Yeah.
So it's engineered to be like super pure and super effective.
Yeah.
So when that shit gets into you like that, it's medicine. It gets into your bones. It gets into your muscles. It's a terrible kick.
Mm.
Not that heroin is any easier, but I feel like it just lasted. The withdrawals from the OxyContins were like drawn out,
Well, and I know we're probably going to jump around a little bit, but when was the first time you went through a withdrawal? Because I mean, I've heard people
So
like die from it.
it was, I don't remember how old I was. I was probably, I don't know, maybe like 16, 17 years old. I was working for this company delivering party supplies,
Mm-hmm.
and I was pulling a dolly through this guy's backyard, and I was like, I think I got a cold. And I was talking to the kid I was working with, and I was like, it's like the flu. I was like, I'm congested. My nose is running. My stomach's all messed up. My bones and joints are all achy. And the kid was like, you've been fucking with them pills, haven't you? And I was,
Damn.
I was like, yeah. And he was like, that's what it is. I was like, what are you talking about? He's like, you're having withdrawals, dude. You're jonesing. You got to go get high. And I was like, nah, man, I'm not addicted. Like, and then, that sat in the back of my head for a couple hours. I got home, went and got a pill, went and got high, and it went away. And I was like,
shit.
oh, dude, I was fucking dope sick. Like, that's why I felt like that. I was like, okay, well, let's not let that happen again, you know? And instead of being like, oh shit, I got to get away from this, I was like, oh shit, I got to get more of this.
And make sure it doesn't happen again. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Holy shit. Huh.
Yeah.
So
that was like,
yeah, sorry, man. I know we're kind of jumping around a little bit. So that started around 17. You said 20s is when it kind of started taking off for you on the criminal side and homelessness. I don't think you and I have ever talked about the homelessness side, but what were you doing, I guess? And I'm assuming this was to feed the addiction.
Yeah, so my parents had picked up that something was going on. My brother and my father are also drug addicts.
Okay.
And, I'm not going to speak on their situation. I only say that because it runs in the family and it was more accepted in my household. So I didn't really hide things from my parents. So like they knew to a certain extent what was going on. They didn't know I was sticking needles in my arm when I was that young, but they knew that
Yeah.
I was out like partying and stuff. You know what I
Definitely.
mean? So, but once they did kind of realize what was going on, they were like, bro, you got to go. You know what I
Oh,
mean?
really?
So, like, yeah, they're like, you can't be doing this shit like around the house and stuff like that. And at the time I was dating this girl, so I would kind of just, stay at her place and stuff like that. And, so right around then, that was like, 19. And then, I would kind of clean up my act a little bit and, they'd let me come back to the house and stuff like that. And, so it wasn't right away. I'm trying to think when this was. So probably I lived in Brockton for a couple years. So I don't know, maybe like around 22, everybody was like, bro, we're fucking sick of you. Like, I don't want to see your face. Like,
You mean family?
come around, yeah, like you come around here, the change goes missing, the roaches are gone from the ashtray. Like, don't even come around here no more, And same thing, like I just burned all my bridges at that point. And I lived in actually my girlfriend's car. I didn't even have my own car at that point. So I lived in her car
Yeah.
off and on for about a year. And yeah.
You lived there for a
And then
year?
and then I ended up actually totaling that car.
Oh my God, bro.
And yeah, and then I bounced around a little bit, like did some couch surfing and stuff like that. And I ended up going to jail a little while after that.
Was that your
Wait,
first time?
no, no. I'm trying to. Sometimes this stuff gets a little blurry in my head with the timeline because
No, that's all right, man.
leading up to prison, like the last couple of years leading up to prison was just like a blur. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So, but yeah, so I had been living in Brockton with her for a little while, and then we kind of were rocky, and I couldn't really stay there anymore. But she would let me sleep in the car, so good on her. But
Now, was she also an addict or was she supporting you or
yeah,
how did
so
that
I
go?
met her. I had met this girl. I had a short period of sobriety. I was staying back at my parents' house. I had signed up for some classes at a local community college. Figured, education was the way to turn my life around. And I met her. I was like 20, 21. She was 18. She had just gotten out of high school. And we started dating. So she was getting high and like drinking, doing drugs and stuff like that. So when I started introducing those things, it wasn't like crazy to her. Like she was like, "Oh yeah, I like doing cocaine." You know what I mean? "Oh yeah,
Oh
I like
shit.
doing I like doing pills once in a while." But when and at first it was a once in a while thing, but me being an addict, it progressed really quickly with me. And then she kind of was like, "Hey, what the fuck's going on?" But she was like keeping up at the same time. So she spiraled right into it with me.
Yeah.
And, yeah, so we were together for like 5 years.
Oh,
And
wow.
then, yeah, so yeah, we went through like some shit together. And then I ended up going to prison for the bank robbery charge. And yeah, we went our separate ways at that point.
That was the final straw for her.
No, that wasn't the final straw for her, dude. Like we talked for like a couple years into my prison sentence. Like we would exchange letters and stuff like that, and call on the phone every once in a while. She would talk to my family on holidays, birthdays, stuff like that. She went in one direction, and I was trying to go in another direction, and you know, it just is what it is sometimes,
Yeah. No, I mean, yeah. No, I definitely understand. And again, I apologize. I know we're jumping around, but so what do you remember what your first arrest was for, or what that looked like?
That was an assault and battery. Actually, I got into a fight with her.
Oh, it's with her.
Yeah.
So, well, I mean, yeah, you guys are doing stuff that, I mean, I'm sure it was somewhat volatile looking back on
Yeah.
it now. I mean, you're older now, so
Well, he liked to drink.
who's he?
That her stepfather.
Oh, her stepfather.
Yeah, so he liked to drink and he also liked to run his mouth. And he was
Well,
like, I don't know, like he was like a whatever. He liked to run his mouth, and he just ran his mouth one night, and he ended up hitting me, and then he ended up hitting her, and then it just turned into like a melee, and you know I got arrested for it.
so even though he was the adult, or actually, were you in your 20s at that point?
Yeah, and yeah. And
Uh,
it happened at his house. I was sitting out in front of his house one night, like I
yeah.
don't know where, like, and she was talking to her mother inside, and he came home and like saw me out there, so he was pissed off. He was drunk. He went upstairs, said something to them, came downstairs to like walk the dog. When he
Mm,
came outside, he like started saying shit to me. I was sitting in the car, and I ran my mouth back, and he reached in and hit me. So
mm,
I got out, and him and I like started tussling in the street, and then he came down, like they saw from the window. So then my girlfriend came down, and he hit her. Like I'm like I think on purpose, but it was one of those things where like was he like swinging for me and he hit her, like, that type of thing. But as soon as that happened, then I was like all bets are off, and
yeah.
he ended up he ended up going to the hospital. So
Damn, bro.
yeah, so then but that's what happened. So like they called the police, like my ex-girlfriend's mother called the police, and then he had to be transported. And of course, when she's like, the police are coming, I was like, well, I'm out of here. So
I
it
see.
made me look guilty. You know what I mean? So like
Yeah.
he was able to give his version of the story. He said that he came home from work and I was hiding underneath the staircase, like
Oh my God.
and yeah, and then when he came out, like, after he shut the garage door, I basically like jumped him, but that is definitely not what happened.
Yeah. I mean, I feel bad too because I know exactly what you're talking about. I've seen that shit happen a few times. Like, and on law enforcement side, you're like, you kind of have to pick a side. I mean, sometimes,
Yeah.
unfortunately, that fucking blows. Dude.
Well, and you know what it was too? Like I said, so he had lived in Brockton his whole life. He had one of those like big Irish families. So like he knew somebody that knew somebody that knew.
Yeah.
So it was like, it was not, it was just a shitty situation, you know,
Yeah.
but I put myself in that situation. If I wasn't such a scumbag, it would have never happened. So,
Well, I
you
mean,
know,
but dude, I've seen that shit happen. Just a bunny trail for a second, but I knew a guy when I was in Hillsborough. He was multiple time convicted felon. But when I started looking at his criminal history and I was talking to him one day because I arrested him again. I said, dude, all your charges are domestic stuff. He's like, dude, I've got 10 baby mamas. And he's like, I can't afford child support. So then they arrest me. They take my license. I can't drive to work. So then he's like, it's self perpetuating. He goes, so then then they put protection orders, but then I'll get text messages saying, hey, your kids want to see you. So I'll go see my kids. And
uh-huh.
if I don't give them money or whatever, they'll call the police and then they'll violate my protection order. He goes, I can't get out of it. He goes, I'm just spiraled out of night. He goes, I can't work. I can't drive. I can't. And I'm like, God dang, dude, like that is the worst story I've ever heard.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just a bad setup. I'm like, I don't know how, and there's nothing, I don't even know how I could have helped him at all, but I was like, that shit just sucked. You just set up for failure.
Well, that's one of those things. And like when I used to go to the high schools, I would say this to the kids too. Like if you're going to get caught up in the system, and this is something that I didn't do, I didn't get educated on the system because
Yeah.
once you get caught up in it, like with that poor dude, like he's just trying to see his kids or, get to work or whatever. But it's like,
Yep.
you're already in it. So
Yeah. It's too late.
yeah. But,
Yeah. At
um,
least educate yourself. So, all right. So we checked off the first arrest. So then kind of like you already mentioned the bank robbery, but kind of like what led up to that? Because obviously I assume in my ignorance, you didn't just go zero to bank robbery.
no. So like I said, so the last couple of years, things were just getting progressively worse for me. And, I was doing like, get arrested for something like that. get picked up on shoplifting, just stupid stuff. And like I was saying about getting educated on the system. So you go in front of a judge and they tell you, hey, you can just sign this green piece of paper, plead guilty to this today, and you can leave. You know what I mean? You get, 6 months unsupervised probation or whatever the case is. And you're like, yeah, absolutely. Give me the green sheet. Let me get out the door today. And then, 5.5 months later, you get arrested for driving without a license or whatever the hell you get arrested for. So then the unsupervised probation goes to supervised probation. Then you fail a drug test. Well, you know what I mean? Like it just,
Yeah, they start stacking that stuff up on you.
get caught up in the system pretty easily.
Yeah.
And so that stuff was going on. And also my drug habit was just ramping out of control. I was, trying to sell drugs to support a habit. I was trying to work when I could work. I was pulling off like little, nickel and dime schemes here and there, shoplifting, just doing whatever I could, just like, like that, just the most basic criminal shit, just barely trying to eke by, with such a miserable existence. But it was all just to fuel my drug habit.
Yeah.
And, yeah. So that, like I said, that kept building and the crimes kept escalating and the drug amounts, you just kept getting bigger and stuff like that. So I got arrested. I had some heroin on me. I got arrested with one night. I got arrested with some crack on me. Just stuff like that. Anyway, so that stuff was progressing and I was getting sick of it, man. Like I said, we would go out and, we were like ripping off construction sites, stealing copper.
Yeah.
Taking tools, trying to pawn people's tools, you'd go out with people trying to steal cars. Like we weren't these professional thieves. We were just like, okay, what the hell can we steal tonight? Oh, it's not screwed down. Like, let's take it. We can probably get some money for this in the morning.
Yeah.
I was getting sick of it, man. There was one day I got caught twice shoplifting.
On the same day?
On the same day, dude. Well, actually, so the second time I didn't get caught. They caught me in the store. I ran and I got away. But that was like, I feel like that was right around the turning point where I was like, no more of this shit. Like I was sick of this fucking petty stuff. I need to start fucking actually making money. And then that's what led to the banks. I said to myself one day, I was like, all right, I need money. What is the most direct line to me in money? And typically when you steal something, even if it's of high value, which has happened in the past, and people know that it's stolen, they're not going to pay you top dollar for it. They're going to give you the lowest amount of money that they can. So I was like, I just want the money. I don't want to have to worry about somebody selling something. I don't want to have to worry about getting caught trying to sell it. They add to me, all this stuff. I was like, I just want the money. So that's when I started passing notes and robbing banks.
No, I hear you. I do want to get to that. So when you were talking about your habit, what was the most that you remember? Like, cause dude, you're saying 80, like that's fucking a lot to me, but you seem like that was like early on. So I'm assuming it got worse.
Early on. Yeah. So that was like, by the end of high school, maybe like the summer getting out of high school, I was still primarily doing OxyContin and, kind of just like dabbling with the heroin.
Yeah.
So the weird thing, because at the time, the big dig was kind of wrapping up and a lot of those guys were coming. A lot of those guys would get hurt at work, get put on pain pills, end up with oxys, and then either end up with a habit or end up selling them. So there was like I said, they were everywhere. So when I was, 17, 18, 19 working construction jobs and the dudes I was working with were 35, 40, 50 years old, they were all doing pain pills. So it was like super accepted. Like you go to work and be like, yo, I need a 40. And someone would be like, bro, I got you. And
40s, dude, that's wild to me, bro. That's blowing my mind.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, knock you out.
But that's what I mean though. But we were doing like a couple of those a day. Like you do one in the morning, one at lunchtime, one at the end of the day, smoke a joint, have a couple of drinks at the end of the night. So like we were doing it all the time.
Yeah.
And it was more accepted with the pain pills, like the heroin and stuff. Like that was still super underground. Like you wouldn't just like,
I
have a lot of friends whose first felony was getting caught with a hypodermic syringe at like 19 years old. And
Oh,
now, boom,
gotcha.
you're a fucking felon. Because when we started shooting dope, we used to have to drive to Rhode Island to buy syringes. They didn't sell them in Massachusetts. You had to have a prescription for them, or you had to be
Yeah.
on the exchange program. So it was like I said, it was super. It's not like today where, it's out in the open and everybody talks about it. Like,
Yeah.
it wasn't,
Wasn't like that.
it was still like a more of a stigma, And I'm glad that we're moving in the direction we are currently.
So I have a side question, and I'm going to talk about the bank robbers and how that all led up to that. But so when you said, I mean, did you ever successfully? And again, I'm not asking you to incriminate yourself. Allegedly, did you actually complete stealing a car? And then how would that convert into money?
Dude, okay. I take liberties with my stories. I exaggerate sometimes, and the names and places and all that shit's been changed to protect the guilty.
Absolutely.
I'm going to start right there. I went out with one of my boys one night and he was like, bruh, we're going to steal a car and then we're going to hit like a fucking major lick tomorrow. And we don't even have to worry about it because like we're going to be in the stolen car so we can get wild. And I was like, word, you know how to steal cars?
Yeah.
And yeah. I was like, all right, dude. So we scraped together like our last fucking $8, got some loose cigarettes, fucking put some gas in this tank, and we're driving around and he was looking for like this one specific car that like
Yeah.
somebody had taught him how to steal like 10 years before. So we're driving around looking for like a 98 Honda Civic.
Oh yeah.
It's gotta be blue and it's gotta be a hatchback because that's the only one he knows how to hotwire.
Okay.
So we end up driving around and we were in Boston and I forget what train station we were in front of. I can see it in my head. I can't, it doesn't, we were over in Mattapan. Anyway,
Yep.
he gets a car. So he gets the car. We drive it back down to Brockton. We ditch it behind like this apartment complex. Like, all right, we're going to come back tomorrow. If it's still there tomorrow, then like we're good. We can use the car. And so we go and we do all that. The next day, we go to Home Depot. I forget we were going to steal like some power tools and stuff. And my job was just to be the driver. So we drive over this Home Depot. He
Hmm.
goes in and it was funny because he like dressed up in like business casual, like had like a short sleeve, like button up shirt with like
Yeah.
a tie he pulled down a little bit.
Yeah.
Khaki pants that were like way too big for him with like,
Yeah.
busted pleat and some, brown loafers. And he walks in like I don't know why, but that was his undercover look. And
Yeah.
so he goes in, he fills up a carriage with all these like power tools and stuff. He walks right up to the front door, leaves the carriage, walks out, gets in the car, and he's like, I can't do it. So we brought the car back to where we had it. And yeah, and so we basically stole a car that night for nothing. Yeah,
So it
that
was
was
more
that
for to
was
use to do other stuff. Cause
Yeah, that's what it would have been for. I don't know how to. I'm not a mechanic. I don't know. I know there's like chop shops and stuff like that. It'd be cool. I wish I knew where one was, but
dude, I actually arrested one dude in Florida who actually used to steal 18 wheelers and construction equipment and run it to Miami from Tampa. And he goes, they'd steal $100,000 truck. He'd be like, yeah, they'd give me 20 grand. I'm like, God damn. He goes, but they drop it off at the port. It'd be on a shipping container and fucking gone like that. And I've never met anyone else that's ever actually like gone through the chop shop process.
no.
Anyway, so
There was rumors of one place, and it was kind of a similar thing where, like we just said, there's a big immigrant population,
yeah.
so it's hard for them to get stuff like that. So they would break it down and then send stuff back home. And I did have a couple like drug dealers over the years. At one point, I had some stolen credit cards, and we were getting a lot of big screen TVs. And this was when like the flat screen plasma TVs were just kind of coming in.
Yeah.
So we would bring those and these guys would buy them up. And I asked them one day what they were doing with them. And they're like, well, first of all, like we're getting them from you for like a fraction of the price. But when we send them back to like DR or we send them back to Haiti or we send them, to the islands, essentially they're worth, 3 times as much because nobody can get that shit. So they'd
Mm,
send it back home and, some other drug dealer or whatever, somebody that had some money would be buying these TVs out back home. But that
gotcha.
was the only time I really ever, was electronic.
Yeah, no, yeah. So through all these arrests that you had for the things, do any different trooper or cop stand out for being either like trying, being super cool or super fucking an asshole or corrupt? Do you have any? Does anything ring a bell? And it's okay if not.
I mean, there are times and people and there are certain cops, mostly from when I was younger. And so, looking back on it now, they probably saw the writing on the wall. So they were busting balls for the right reasons.
Mhm.
But when you're, 15, 16, 17 years old and you're just like, bro, why can't we drive around and drink beers, man? We're just trying to live our lives.
Yeah.
You're like, this dude's a fucking prick. And
Stop hassling me.
yeah, there was one guy, Sergeant Bates.
Yeah.
Yeah, in Whitman. He was an amazing human being. Officer Pearson, he was a great guy. I went to high school with his daughters. He'd always be like, bro, what the fuck are you doing? You know,
Yeah.
Officer Bombardier, he was another good guy, local Whitman cops. So there was a lot of good guys out there. And I mean, again, by the time I was having a lot of interaction with law enforcement, you know, I was looking disheveled. They're like, what's going on with this kid? So I try not to hold it against anybody, cause that's what their job is. Like their job is
Yeah.
literally to stop people like me from doing what I was doing. So people are just trying to go to work, can mind their business and not have to worry about their tools missing off the job site the next day, you know?
Fair enough. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't, they were doing what they were supposed to be doing at the time. I was doing what I was supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
You know, I was
Dude.
keeping them employed,
Yeah.
doing my part. That's my civic duty, man.
Dude, sorry, I keep referencing stories, but you're ringing bells. But I had a dude, he was like, I don't know, he was 50s. And I think I got him for shoplifting, but he was like professional. He had like a list of items that he was taking out of Walmart. And we caught him and I was trying to interview him. And then a detective came in and he said the greatest thing. He's like, man, I've been doing this shit since 83. I ain't got shit to say. You do your job. I'll do my job. And then that was it. That's all he said for the rest of the night. I was like, that is the most like
That's it.
honest conversation I've ever had with somebody on the other side. He's like,
That's actually so that when I did finally get arrested for the bank robbery,
yeah,
I end up back in Massachusetts, and it's a very formal procedure when the FBI interviews you,
oh
right? So
yeah,
they come in, they got the brass is there with them, they got cameras set up. There's three guys in suits sitting across from me. They come in and they go through the whole spiel, and I'm still special agent in charge. This is special agent. This is detective so and so. Mr. Tarbox. The time is now, you know, 17:04 and 13 seconds. We're here to ask you about some pending federal bank robbery charges. And I said, well, you're going to have to talk to my lawyer about this. And the guy goes, well, it is now, 17:04 and 15 seconds. This interview is concluded. And that was, you know what I mean? And my lawyer, he was like, dude, that was the smartest thing you could have said.
yeah,
So yeah, that's just the way it is. That's, yeah.
yeah. All right, well, let's get into it real quick because we were brought up. So let's talk about the bank robberies, and I'll let you kind of tell your story, bro. I
Yeah.
find it fascinating.
Yeah, I was, mainly passing notes. And like I said, it wasn't,
Can you
anything.
explain what that is for people who
So
don't?
I would go in and I grab like a withdrawal slip and I would write on the withdrawal slip, like, no funny business. This is a robbery, you know, give me the money. And I would
Mhm.
pass it to the people. And, a couple times they were like, haha, like, is this a joke? And I'm like, no, give me the fucking money. And
Mhm.
then they would typically give me the money and then I would leave and go spend the money.
Now, would you try to mask up or hide your identity or anything?
No, so at the time, again, like I said, I was homeless, so my
Yeah.
hair was long. It was like down to my shoulders. I would usually wear a hat or like a hoodie or something like that, and I
Hmm.
would pull the hair down, try to cover my face the best I could. Not really like look up, like not look at the floor, but also not look up, so you couldn't really get a clear look at my face. And
Yeah.
so I just do things. My whole thing was I didn't want you to know what I was doing while I was doing it.
Yeah.
Didn't want to wear a mask. I didn't want to go in there, guns blazing, yelling, stuff like that. Like
Hmm.
I wanted to get an amount of money and I wanted to get out the door and I wanted to get back on with my life like as quickly as possible. So just tried to be nondescript.
So, do you remember the first one you did and how much you got?
Mm, I do. I do.
I mean, that first one's got to
I got,
be that's got to be a
got
lot of
yeah,
wreck your nerves.
that was scary.
Yeah,
That was scary, and I was pretty young when I did that, and yeah, I got a lot of money. I got a lot of money. I got like almost $10,000. So I got hooked pretty quickly, you know.
yeah.
Not many times where you can work for, an hour and have $10,000 in your pocket.
So now, did you do that by? Because I mean, 10,000. That's a pretty good chunk. Like, I mean, was the habit at that point so strong that you spent that pretty quick, or were you trying to like kick some money to your
That's
people,
the
your
thing.
girl?
That's the thing. Yeah, you spend it, easy come, easy go. So
Fair enough.
even when I was selling drugs, it was like I would sell just enough to buy more stuff. With stuff like that,
Yeah.
you go from living in your car to living in hotels every night, which is a couple $100 a night. And when you have a big chunk of money in your pocket, you're not going to the, Motel 8 down the street where you usually smoke crack. You want to go to the Copley Place in Boston for a few nights and smoke crack. You know what I
Fair
mean?
enough.
Yeah. So like that's the stuff that you would do. So if you have $10,000 in your pocket,
Yeah.
you're going to spend it like you got $1,000 in your pocket. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah. Yeah.
spending, it's all relative, you know? So yeah, it comes and it goes quick, man.
So was that the biggest one, the 10,000, or do you remember, was there a higher amount at any point?
No, they never really got higher than that. It was always, and there were times too, like there was one where I came up with like $1,500.
Oh,
The lady
damn.
behind the counter, she was acting like it was her money. I think I even said something to that effect, like it's not fucking yours. Like you can give it to
Yeah.
me, you're still gonna get a paycheck at the end of the week, you know.
Yeah.
But for the most part, people would just, I mean, that's what they're trained to do, or so I've been told, and it just I thought it was like a victimless crime. And even at the time, I remember when I got like the discovery packet and it had like these witness statements and, all this stuff in there. And one of the women had written a letter to the prosecutor that she wanted the prosecutor to give to, whatever judge heard the case. But she was saying how she was having a really tough time. She didn't like going to work. She was always looking over her shoulder. And I was like, I can't believe this bitch, man. She's trying to get workman's comp because of me. Like, I didn't do any of this stuff to her. And
Hmm.
it kind of hit me like years later. Like, I fucked that lady's day up. And then if what she was saying true, like I fucked her life up. I scared the shit out of her because I went in
Yeah.
there, was yelling like, give me the money. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
and that I didn't realize how it was affecting people until later in life. And I mean, it's just a lousy thing to do, you know?
No, no, I hear you, bro. Well, because I have some questions. Obviously, because obviously now this is all in the past, and again, for people who don't know these things about you, I mean, I think it would shock them because I mean, dude, you're like a successful businessman, you're crushing it, and your personality is one that, in my opinion, like I don't know, you're super outgoing, charming, like you speak very well. Like it blows my mind some of the stuff that you're telling me, and I know we've talked about some of this stuff over the years, but because I kind of want to talk about when that conversion started for you. But how many would you say bank wise did you without
I'll
without
say it like
adding
this.
anything to yourself,
So
but before you
I
actually got
was
caught?
convicted on 4,
There you go. What's
but I'm going to say it was more than 2. It was less than 10. And I've robbed more banks than Jesse James, my friend.
Let's go, bro. Yeah,
Yeah.
fair enough. So I got to keep that in my mind. So let's talk about when you actually got arrested because I read the article, but obviously firsthand perspective for you. Well, how did that all go down?
Well, I had left Boston. I had ditched my phone and I was just trying to disappear. I had a little bit of money in my pocket and I was trying to disappear.
Well, why did that one make you want to disappear? What was the reasoning for that?
Well, so I was at a hotel and I was partying with like the typical kind of couple people I was hanging out with at the time.
Hmm.
And I got a phone call and I didn't answer it. And I got another phone call. And I didn't answer it. And it was the same person calling me over and over and over again. And it's probably like midnight, 2 o'clock in the morning at this point.
Yeah.
So for me, I answer it. And this person in a very stern, metered tone said, bro, I don't know what the fuck you're doing, what you've been up to. I don't want to know. Because I saw you on the news last week, thought it was you, saw another picture of you tonight. It's definitely you. You need to cut the shit, and hung up.
Oh shit.
Yeah, I was like, okay. So then I turn on the TV and I'm like, okay, that does look like me. I was like, maybe it's time to cool it. But what I had been doing since probably like 1920 is when I would make like a decent score, I would take off to New York City, party down there for like a few days. And then, depending on what it was, I'd come back up, either to Boston, hang out in Boston for a few days, whatever, till like the heat kind of died down a little bit.
Yeah.
And, but so basically that's what I thought I was going to do. And I was like, you know what? The BP oil spill had happened and they were doing like a bunch of construction down in like, Gulf Coast and stuff. So I
Yeah.
was like, I'll be able to go get a job doing some shit like that. Like I'll be able to, you know, shovel dirty sand or, help on a construction site. I can do stuff like that. So I'll just go down there and kind of fade into that. And,
But that
as you
was
get,
that was your thought. You were gonna
that
head
was,
down
that was,
there.
that was my plan. Yeah. I was heading towards Louisiana when I got arrested.
Okay. And where did you end up getting arrested?
I got arrested in Raleigh, North Carolina by the marshals at the bus station.
And how'd that go down?
Oh, that was fun. So I was whacked. I was tweaked, and I think if I remember correctly, somebody on the bus had like called the police, and rightfully so because I was like smoking crack in the little bathroom. I'm
Oh Jesus.
going down the highway. Yeah, like I was tweaked, and so yeah, so I got off the bus and I was going to use the bathroom, and it's a big bus station, and they have one of those hallways where there's like showers and lockers and all kinds of stuff like that. So I'm walking down this long hallway, and I walk into the bathroom, and there's two guys in there, and I could tell like something was weird, like something was off as soon as I walked in. I was like, oh shit, I think I just interrupted a blowjob. Like I was like, the vibe is weird in this room. I was like,
Yeah,
all
yeah,
right.
yeah.
I'm just going to take a piss and then I'm going to go. And actually, I remember I had stopped at the vending machine on my way in and I bought these cookies. And they were like specific cookies that they sell on the commissary, like usually when you're in jail. And I was like, this is kind of like a bad omen. Like I shouldn't buy these, but these fucking things are good. So I did. I bought those. I went in the bathroom and things were weird. So I did my thing, washed my hands, and I'm walking out. And as I'm walking out, two guys that were in there were actually undercover cops. So when I walked out the door, they scooped me up. And I'm looking down this hallway and two dudes like as big as you, 6'3", 6'4",
Mm-hmm.
20, they step around the corner, marshal's vest, rifles out. So they point their rifles at me. These two dudes throw me up against the wall and, immediately, yeah. I'm like, holy shit, dude.
Yeah. I mean, what went through your
These
head?
dudes
I
look
mean,
like they looked. I don't know where these guys came from, but they were like 6'5". They must have been hiding behind the vending machines or something like that. Came down on their little paracord ropes and shit.
yeah.
But yeah, so they grabbed me and they brought me to Wake County Jail. And I didn't fight extradition. I got caught with some drugs and stuff. Oh, they were yelling. Cause it had been reported at one point that was like carrying a gun. So they were yelling, "Where's the gun? Where's the gun? I don't have a gun." They searched the bus. They didn't find anything. But again, I had drugs, drug paraphernalia, stuff like that on me.
Yeah.
And the laws in North Carolina are different than the laws in Massachusetts. Like they don't play games when it comes to stuff like that. So the local police were like, "You're smoked, dude." And I was like, nah, not here though. Like, I'm not worried about any of this stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
So they held me there and the judge basically said to me, if I didn't fight extradition back to Massachusetts, then he would dismiss the charges down there. So I didn't fight extradition. I mean, I knew I was going back anyway. It was like,
Yeah,
whatever.
the new plan.
So I did like a little over a month down there. Got out this, I think it was a constable from Erie, Pennsylvania, picked
Mm-hmm.
me up in North Carolina, went to Texas, spent like a day and night in jail in Texas, and then drove back up and got dropped off Ash Street in Bedford, Massachusetts, which is like a little like county jail up there. And, yeah, spent some time up there while I was on.
Did they did they fly you from North Carolina to Texas, or did you have to
No, we
drive?
drove. So this guy
Jesus.
drove from North Carolina to Texas. It was a husband and wife, and they had contracted with the state of Massachusetts, something to do
Yeah.
with like Commonwealth and the municipalities and whatever. But this guy was a subcontractor for the state of Massachusetts that would
Hmm.
bring back people that like fugitives, and he would bring them back. So his wife ended up getting like deputized or whatever the case was, and we picked up a female who was wanted. So the two of them, yeah, we drove back.
Were you like in the back of a van or something? Like what?
It was,
That's wild. That's
yeah, it was weird. It was a Jeep. It was like a Jeep Cherokee. And it looked like, yeah, it looked like he had set up the back like for like dogs or something, but the seats were still in there. So it
mm.
looked like the cage of like a transport vehicle, but inside a Jeep Cherokee.
Hmm.
So, yeah, so it was weird.
I mean, and what would he drop you off at different county jails as he went
Yeah,
through?
he drove straight back, and I guess the way the
Jeez.
law is in Massachusetts is like, yeah, so we dropped her off in Plymouth County, which was at the Brockton courthouse, which is where I was thought that I was going, but they ended up bringing me back to the Dartmouth, Bristol County and Ash Street. And that's where they held me because something to do with when you get extradited, the southernmost county, like the southernmost district is where you'll be held.
Hmm.
Because that was farther south and I had committed a crime in like Somerset or something. So I had a warrant there. So that's where they held me.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So then, what did the trial look like? Or was there even? Did you even go to trial?
So initially when I first was arrested, they were like, we got you for 8. And then by the time I got up to Massachusetts and actually got like charged and indicted and stuff, it was for 4.
Gotcha.
So I never went to trial. I ended up pleading out and I got a 4 to 5 year prison sentence for it.
Yeah. And then, what's your take on your defense attorney? Was he assigned to you?
Yeah, he was. It was funny. So I was in the Fall River courthouse. They had just opened the new Superior Courthouse at the time. And you meet some of the funniest people ever in jails, man. It's like that trauma. Like everybody's life sucks. Everybody's miserable. So the shit that comes out of people's mouths, it's gold.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this dude comes downstairs. He gets off the elevator and I hear somebody yell, shit, look at this motherfucking bow tie. Somebody going to jail for a long time. Right? And so I
Uh-huh.
get up. I'm like, oh man, who's this idiot? Right? And I hear him and he goes, are you Mr. Tarbox? And I was like,
Oh shit.
fucker, man. And I don't know, man. He, again, you got to educate yourself on the system and
Yep.
knowing now if I knew now what I know then, I would have fired him and done my best to get another attorney, but you're naive to the system at that point. And I feel like he was an older gentleman, he's a court appointed attorney. He's just going through the motions, and that's what happened.
Yeah.
But he did, fortunately, they were asking in Barnstable County, they were asking for an 8 to 12 year prison sentence because I
Mhm.
had already pled out to a 3 to 5. So they were asking for additional jail time on top of. And he knew the judge. I forget what his connection was to the judge, but he was like, listen, this is what we're going to do here. And he was able to get the 4 in a day, which is what gave me the 4 to 5. So he was able basically to cut their sentence in half. So, I mean, I can't really fault the guy. He did that for me. So,
Yeah. Take what you can get.
yeah, but there was a couple. So, Fruit of the Poisonous Tree, they had used a picture of me robbing a bank to get a positive identification from another bank teller. So I should
Mm.
have been able to get those 2 cases dismissed. And there were other things like that I had brought up to him. And he was just like, he's like, you're just trying to piss people off. This isn't going to go good for you. And maybe he was right, but at the time, I wish he would have done more work, but I could have wrote the stuff up myself and just had him present it, so. You know what I mean? Like if it was really that important to me, I could have done that. But, I didn't know that I could do shit like that at the time.
Yeah,
So,
fair enough. Well, so then you go to federal prison. Can you, I mean,
so I went to state prison actually.
oh, state prison. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So the way that it was explained to me is because of the sentencing guidelines for the
Yeah.
feds and for state prison, it was basically the same prison sentence. Like I probably would have got like 36 to 50 something months in federal prison. And I got essentially, the 4 to 5 in state prison. Now, the thing is the feds like to prosecute crimes that they are slam dunks. With those two, I think looking back on it, I think with those two, with that shaky identification, I
Mm-hmm.
think they realized that there was a little bit of wiggle room. So they just left it in the state courts. And I was also told basically that if I ever got arrested, for anything of consequence again, then I would get like, because of the federal sentencing guidelines, they would probably pick it up. If I got found with
Gotcha.
like or a large amount of drugs, I think that they would probably prosecute it just because it would be advantageous for them at this point.
Gotcha. Well, so then you're in prison, and I'm assuming this is when you're like, all right, bro, I gotta fucking chill this shit out, and like, what was that like for you? And because obviously when you got out, I mean, from what I understand, you started, I mean, you progressed to a business, and now you're doing your own thing. So,
Yeah.
was the change in prison, or?
Yeah, the first big moment of clarity that I had was I was in that place, Ash Street. I was about, I don't know, right around a year in, like maybe like 10 months or something like that. I knew I was going to be taking a plea deal in at least one of the cases soon, and I knew that I was going to be leaving to go upstate. So, I did what any good con would do. I sold some shit and I bought some crack. So
Yeah, yeah, fair
I
enough.
was in my cell. I was in my cell one night smoking crack, and the stuff, the clothes that they give you in jail, it's not like the clothes you get on the street. It's all, irregular and nothing fits right. But so they give you those like whitey tighty underwears.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like 2 o'clock in the morning. I'm underneath my bunk, scrubbing the underneath of my bunk, all geeked out. My ass is hanging out, and I can like feel eyes on me. So I wiggle my way out of the bunk, and I look up, and one of the cops is just standing there on the tear, just staring at me. And I'm like, "What's up?" He's like, "What's up? What's up, dude?" And then he just kind of walks away. And I was like, "Oh, for sure, he's going to get someone to come and search this cell. Like, there's no reason why I should be cleaning underneath my bunk at 2 o'clock in the morning." So I hop in bed and I'm like trying to pretend like I'm sleeping.
Yeah.
And I'm lying there, and all I want to do is get up and move around because I'm on coke, but I can't. I got to pretend I'm sleeping. So I got the light off, and
Mm-hmm.
all of a sudden it hit me. It was like, dude, like, what are you doing with your life? Like, you're not even enjoying yourself right now. Like, you're, like just high anxiety. If you can't do it here, how the hell are you going to do it on the street?
Yeah.
So I kind of started trying to clean my life up the first time then. It didn't really work out. It wasn't, I was trying though. I
Yeah.
stopped hanging out with certain people. I stopped trying to get in trouble. I stopped trying to chase drugs. I tried to read more. I tried to work out. Once I got upstate, I was taking classes and minding my own business.
Yeah.
And, when I got out that time, I was trying to put my life together. My parole got violated. I went back in. When I came out after that, I was all kinds of pissed off.
What did you get violated for?
And associating with known felons.
Wow, dude.
Yeah.
No, I
So
know.
I
I
went
know that
back.
one. I get it.
Yeah. I went back. So like I said, I got a 4 to 5. Another reason why this guy, my lawyer, when I got sentenced because of a wording, like he didn't word something correctly. So months of my prison sentence didn't end up counting. Like, yeah, it was like a weird thing. So when you get like a 4 to 5, you can get good time off of both numbers, but because of the way he had written the plea deal, one
Mm-hmm.
of the sentences I couldn't, so I had to do like 4 years before I could see parole. So like that cost me a few months. Got out at like the 4 year mark and was out for like a month, and then went back in and basically wrapped up the rest of the sentence in Walpole. And got out that time, was really pissed off. And it lasted for a while. I got into a shitty relationship and then I relapsed again after that.
Mm-hmm.
But the whole time I was trying to do better, but I was still
Mm-hmm.
caught up in cycles of like thinking, still hanging out with the same people. So each time that I would kind of fuck up and I'd be like, okay, like that didn't work. Or try something different this time. And
Yeah.
eventually that, thankfully this time, I mean, I moved out of Massachusetts and, you know, they say like geographical cure isn't always the answer, but you know, it's definitely helped for me. It's let me readjust, reevaluate, and kind of, you know, put what's important to me in the forefront. And you know, so it's worked for me
Yeah. How long have you lived in Maine?
since 2018.
And then did you just, because I met you at that one barber shop I can't, in Falmouth, I can't remember.
Yeah,
How long were you there before you started your own barber shop?
that was Americana. Shout out to the boys.
Yeah, awesome
I
barber
was
shop.
I was with them for a couple of years. I apprenticed under Jake, one of the owners over there.
Okay.
And yeah, I went from with Portland. I followed them over to Falmouth, and then from Falmouth, the time I was living in Biddeford, and my great friend Dre and I decided we were going to open up a shop. So we picked up a piece of property and put a barber shop over there, and just been doing what we can, become part of the community, and
Bro,
make some money.
last time I was there, you had people lined up, the fucking gentleman studio, fucking balling. And you're now cutting hair for cop buddies of mine and, and shit like that.
Funny, my ex, her uncle was a retired police officer up here. And it was like, Maine's a small community. You know that. I mean,
Yes, it is.
it was like 1.2 million people. So it's basically just it's just a big city spread out over a
Yes.
massive amount of square miles. So there was like one of those things where like everybody knows him. So I was starting to kind of cutting hair, you know, you'd start talking, oh, you know this one, you know that one. What do you do for work? And everything was kind of working back to him. And he's such a well respected person up here. People would be like, oh, you know him. Like if you know him, you must be a good person. So I started kind of doing that. And then when I met you, it was like all the same people. You were like, you got to meet this guy. You got to meet that guy. And, you know, great group of guys up here. So
No, dude. And honestly, I mean, you are a good person, bro. And your fucking story, like, it's very special. It's rare that you went through all that and then got out. And not only got out, but you're successful, man. Like, you're a fucking business owner. You got your kids and yeah,
I said that to myself when I was in prison. So like I said, I had done a couple of skid bids up until that point, you know,
yeah,
like short little time, but I had never done years, you know, and but you would see people and you could like see them change and they would just give up. And I was like, I don't have that victim mentality. I never had that victim mentality.
yeah,
When you'd be talking to people and they'd be say, oh, you know, my parents were shitty. That's why I'm here. Or like, you know, I grew up in this neighborhood. That's why I'm here. Or my mother's this. That's why I'm here. Or blah, blah, blah. They're blaming everybody but themselves. You know, and I always thought like it's my fault. Like I'm not a victim of anybody. This is me. You know, I'm going to change this shit. And
yeah.
it took me a little while to figure out how to do it. But eventually I was able to figure it out.
Well, thank God you did, bro. Cause I mean, you helped me, you helped my son. Shout
Dude, you
out.
do a great job with your kids, man.
Hey, bro.
I
So far, so I got baby girl's got a year and a half, so I'm just worried about that. I got to tell you a side story. So my son just got done with the Marine Corps boot camp, and he shipped out on Saturday. He thought he was supposed to ship out on Saturday, Dave. He wasn't supposed to be there till fucking Tuesday. So he calls me at midnight last night. Dad, can you help me get a place? I don't know. I'm here too early. I have nowhere to sleep. He ended up sleeping at like a day's end where the door didn't lock all the way. And I'm like, Jesus
oh,
Christ, boy.
man. Good for him. That built your character.
He's
He
with his
told me
butt.
that because when I talked to him the other day, he was trying to figure if he could finagle a little time with his girlfriend or whatever. And he was like, yeah, I hope I don't have to go for a couple days. So when you said he was leaving the next day, I was like, oh man, poor kid. And then that's funny. He wasn't listening, huh?
No, I was like, dude, did you not read your orders? But yeah. So anyway, but I had to tell you that, man. It was like, son, what are you doing? But dude, that's what I'm saying. Like you know, talk to the high schools, and I know you and I spoke with Spitalford and Scarborough, but every time that you would go talk to teachers or whatever, it'd be like, dude, he's fucking amazing. So whatever you're saying to these kids, they fucking loved it.
Yeah. I was just honest with them. And like I said, I say that I think now a lot of people, it's so easy to be like, okay, so I'll use myself for an example. To get my barber license, I had to go through and I had to break down every single arrest that I've ever had. Not every single conviction, because a conviction and arrest are two different things, right?
Yes, correct.
So I've been arrested for more things than I've been convicted of. So I had to go through and explain every single arrest and what I did to fix that situation and like how I'm not going to repeat that because I was getting a license through the state.
Yeah,
So that's a pain in the ass. Some people right there, like they see that and they're like, oh, I got denied to get my barber's license, but they didn't read, like, with Alec, they didn't read the letter. And they think,
exactly.
well, I got denied, but if I do this, then they can't deny me. You know what I mean? Because
Yeah,
I'm not currently serving a prison sentence. I'm not a danger to anyone. Like, you know what I mean? So like, I read what I needed to do. I wrote them that piece of paper and it took a little bit longer. It wasn't as easy as like someone that just goes and applies and get it. But, after a few months, after I talked to a couple of people, I was able to make it happen.
yeah.
Um, so it's just, there are things like that, it's more difficult, but it's not impossible.
No, absolutely. Well, bro, I've had you on the phone for over an hour. I mean, I could talk to you for many more, and I'm looking forward to having a couple more episodes with you, man, at minimum. Is there anything you want to shout out or talk about before we end it?
No, man. I think we covered a lot. So
No,